All right. Well, a new study asserts that COVID boosters for college students is an unethical risk. Now, what does that mean? It means that it is not ethical to force them to take a booster or else risk disenrollment, which is currently the policy at many American colleges. In fact, they still have a vaccine requirement for students and staff, that many require a current booster as well. That means if you've had to have full COVID vaccination as well as a recent booster. It can't have been last year or they kick you out of class. Researchers at Research One universities conducted this study. Here is a list of the professors that worked on this. So if you look closely, you see they are from, University of Oxford, University of Toronto, Harvard, University of Edinburgh, University of Washington, UC San Francisco, Johns Hopkins, right? Florida Department of Health and Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital. What these researchers did was they analyzed how many college-age students will be hospitalized from COVID without these boosters or the full vaccination versus how many will be injured by the vaccine. Now, we have established, because Pfizer told us that there are such thing as adverse reactions. They call them SAE, serious adverse events, right, or effects. We do know that the population more prone to myocarditis is boys in their teens or just after. So basically college age.
So right in this wheelhouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So given this population, given that they are more prone to adverse reactions, but less prone to hospitalization due to COVID, what is the ratio? It's actually very shocking. Look at the study, what the study says itself. It says, using CDC and sponsor reported adverse events data, we find that booster mandates may cause a net expected harm per COVID-19 hospitalization prevented in previously uninfected young adults. We anticipate 18 to 98 serious adverse events, including 1.7 to 3.0 booster-associated myocarditis cases in males, and 1,373 to 3,234 cases of grade 3 or above reactogenicity, which interferes with daily activities. So that's basically other adverse events. Given the high prevalence of post-infection immunity, this risk-benefit profile is even less favorable. That means if you've had COVID, right, and you have immunity from natural infection, it's an even worse sort of ratio. So it means that people, again,
wait, let me understand that. If you take the if you've had COVID before, you have natural immunity and you take the booster, it's actually more problematic.
Right. So what they're saying here is that for every one hospitalization prevented, there will be 18 to 98 serious adverse effects.
Wow.
That is an extremely unfavorable ratio, right?
Yeah.
For every one person who does not get hospitalized, then, and again, like the resulting death ratio in college students is even lower, right? Then 18 to 98 will be harmed, right? This paper is not yet peer-reviewed, but it takes the data directly from Pfizer's own published SAEs, the serious adverse events that effects, from their own clinical trials, which we have gone over on this show many times. And again, they say that they calculated 19 to 98 SAEs based on a university population of 30,000 students.
Wow.
So again, of those, only one has the risk of hospitalization, yet far more have a risk of SAE. So they extrapolate that those things, that this is unethical because of these 5 reasons. 1, no formal risk-benefit assessment exists for this age group. They're trying to do that right now. Like, hey, let's do a risk-benefit assessment. No one's bothered to do that until now. That is curious, don't you think? 2, vaccine mandates may result in a net expected harm to individual young people. 3, mandates are not proportionate. 4, U.S. mandates violate the reciprocity principle because rare, serious vaccine-related harms will not be reliably compensated. I want to talk about that in a second. And 5, they think mandates create wider social harm. Now, number 4 is especially interesting because it says that if they are injured, there's no compensation for them. They have nowhere to go because of gaps in current vaccine injury schemes, right?
Which means basically that these manufacturers, of course, have immunity.
But so do the colleges, it would seem, right? So like we do see, for instance, we've talked about litigation against the military for punishing people for vaccine mandates, for not complying.
Mm-hmm.
And those people, I do believe, have a case, right? Is there something in enrollment, perhaps?
Well, and you're signing. That's a good question, right? You're going to a university. You're signing your rights away, I guess, in some regard, because you're agreeing to go to this campus,
right? And take
the
booster as a result.
Yeah.
So perhaps there's something there that they have given up. That there is some kind of immunity that the university has, or we know already that the vaccine manufacturers have immunity, so they will not. They will not be able to be compensated if they are harmed.
It's like double immunity, because we know the vaccine manufacturers, yes, they have this deep level of immunity from the government in these contracts. They can't be sued for anything. And that's why a lot of these things, it seems, have been thrown out of court. Some of the ones that have been able to prevail have been the ones about religious exemption.
Yes.
So religious exemption could be maybe the thing that we also see pop up against on college campuses. Like you have a religious exemption for taking this, but the college says you have to take it. Do you get kicked out? And then, I mean, I don't know. They could say you can choose not to go here to this university.
Sure.
You know, you can go somewhere else.
Yes. But
I find it very, sorry.
Please.
I find it very, very ironic that of these mandates, I'll choose my words very carefully here. Of these mandates, the people getting immunity are obviously the government themselves, the manufacturers, the vaccine manufacturers, businesses that required employees to do so. Now universities, they're all getting immunity from these vaccine mandates. But who isn't getting actual immunity during this? And that's
individuals,
the people that took it.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, no, and I'm not
the actual word immunity.
I'm doing a play on words.
I get it. I like
actual
it.
immunity.
Yes, you are right. But actually, some countries have quietly started compensating vaccine injuries. Not the U.S., but I have a rundown of who is. Are you interested?
Yes.
Okay.
These are people, say this again. These are people
So these are certain countries have already begun to compensate individuals for injuries for these SAEs due to mandates. Wow. So, okay, first off, in July, the Japanese government awarded a lump sum payment to the family of a woman who died from allergic response to the vaccine. A Ministry of Health panel ruled that a causal relationship, quote, could not be denied in her case because after her vaccine, she had a sudden heart attack. Her family will receive a lump sum worth $325,000. According to the Japan Times, 3,680 people have applied for compensation. 820 have been approved and 62 denied, with decisions on 16 being postponed.
Wow.
In Taiwan, moving on, the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program held a meeting to review 65 cases of SAEs. They awarded compensation to 10 claimants, including a lump sum worth $116,000 to the family of someone who died after receiving the AstraZeneca vaccine. In June, the UK began paying vaccine injury compensation. Victims there are eligible for $150,000. And as of May, 1,681 claims had been filed.
Wow.
The first one paid out was in June for a 48-year-old man named Zion, who died 8 days after his AstraZeneca dosage. His partner, that I told you about already. In Canada, the government has not given out a dollar amount yet, but they do report how many claims they are currently processing. They reported, now this is just of this summer, they reported 774 claims received. They have only approved 8 so far, but this is updated yearly. The last one was in June, and they say they will update the report again in March. Interestingly, there have not been claims paid out in the United States, the most litigious country on the planet, because according to the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, quote, the standard of proof for causation was not met and or a covered injury was not sustained. So no one has met that threshold yet. It says one COVID-19 countermeasure claim, a COVID-19 vaccine claim due to the anaphylactic reaction has been determined eligible and is pending a review. But again, in the U.S., the litigation around seems to be around not who has a reaction or who made it or anything like that. It's more about who is enforcing it at this point: employers, universities. So then you have to wonder, if there is this negative risk benefit for college students, do they have a case, right? You have to think those are coming.
Well, and also, like, what countries had AstraZeneca versus some of these other vaccines? What protections were in place for Pfizer and Moderna?
Right.
And a lot of these governments didn't have the same contracts that the United States did with them. I mean, the United States contract with like Pfizer and Moderna was like ironclad. It was like, you can't be sued for anything if you're Pfizer. Like, Pfizer can get off any problem
even
if you read through those contracts.
Completely neglectful, right?
Yeah, the studies were, I mean, the contracts were amazing. I've read them, and they're I mean, hilarious. It's like, you get everything and we get nothing. That's basically how the contract was written.
Yes, and we see. Is it Bolivia that is a judge is looking into what contracts the government had with the pharmaceutical companies?
Yes.
It's either Bolivia or Brazil. It's a South American country.
It was Bolivia. But yeah.
So, we may get something there, but that will only be that government's negotiations with pharmaceuticals. But it's worth looking at because you have to think that it was replicated around the world. So this is troubling information. You do with it what you will.
And we might get some more information too, because overnight, Senator Rand Paul grilled Dr. Fauci last night once again. And one of the things he said was, you have refused to tell us where are you getting your royalty payments from these drug companies? Who's paying you? You've told us you won't tell us. If we get in power, Republicans get in power, we're going to change the rule, and you'll be back here and you'll be forced to disclose who paid you and how much royalties on your staff, where these drug company monies flowed to. So I would love to see that information. But Dr. Fauci being Dr. Fauci-ish once again.